You walk down pretty much any street, right? Anywhere in the world, and you see them.
Hmm.
Urban light columns. For decades. They've just been there to light up our paths. Simple as that.
Yeah, totally taken for granted usually.
Exactly. But what if I told you these really unassuming structures are actually at the heart of this massive multi-billion-dollar revolution? That they're becoming these sophisticated hubs that are like redefining how our cities actually function.
That's quite a shift from just holding a bulb.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are plunging right into the global urban light column market. Our mission for you listening is basically to cut through all the data and help you quickly grasp the key forces shaping, modern urban infrastructure and uncover some frankly surprising facts about something we see every day.
And it's worth saying, all the figures, all the insights we're diving into today, they come straight from cognitive market research.
That's right from their report, Global Urban Light Column Market, Insights and Forecasts. Okay, let's start with the big picture.
Lay it on us.
So this global market, it's way beyond basic lights now. It generated nearly $4.8 billion. That was back in 2021.
Almost $5 billion. That's already substantial.
It is. But here's where it gets really interesting. Projections show it soaring past $5.8 billion by 2025.
Okay.
And then, get this, a staggering $8.8 billion by 2033.
Wow. Okay, so a big jump again.
Yeah, that represents a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR,
Yeah.
of 5.3% over that decade.
Right.
So, what does this consistent growth really tell us about the future of our cities? And crucially, where is this transformation happening fastest?
Well, what's fascinating about that 5.3% CAGR,
Right.
it might not sound enormous year on year, but it compounds. Like you said, it means the market nearly doubles in just over a decade.
Right.
And this isn't just, buying more lights. It really signals a fundamental global shift. It reflects widespread urbanization, definitely, but also, critically, a deliberate push towards integrating smart capabilities into city infrastructure.
Ah, the smart city angle.
Exactly. Think of it as this sort of quiet revolution where simple light poles evolve. They become these sophisticated platforms for, well, everything from IoT sensors to 5G connectivity. It's all driving efficiency and, frankly, livability in our cities.
That makes perfect sense. And yeah, when we talk about where this growth is happening, you absolutely have to start with Asia Pacific.
Definitely. The powerhouse.
No question. This area's contribution is expected to almost double. It was around $1.6 billion in 2021, projected to shoot over $3 billion by 2033.
That's huge growth.
It is. And within that region, China is clearly the dominant force. Its market value already over $638 million in 21 is projected to surge, over $1.2 billion by 2033.
Wow.
What's driving that kind of monumental growth in China? Is it just sheer size, or is there more to it?
Well, size is part of it, obviously, but China's growth isn't just volume. It's a direct reflection of a really targeted national strategy.
Yeah.
They are aggressively integrating smart city initiatives, investing heavily in advanced urban infrastructure. It makes them a kind of a global bellwether for where this market's headed.
Right, setting the standard almost.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And, Japan's also a significant player. They're projected to reach over 337 million by 2033. And India is recording incredibly fast-paced growth. It's set to basically double its market to over 550 million.
Doubling, wow.
Yeah, it really highlights how rapidly these economies are modernizing their urban landscapes. And beyond those giants, you've got substantial contributions too from South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Southeast Asia, Taiwan.
Mm.
It's widespread.
It's clear Asia Pacific is setting a blistering pace. But okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's look at Europe. They also hold a very strong footing here.
Absolutely. Significant market.
Their total revenue was over $1.3 billion in 2021, and that's projected to increase to nearly $2.5 billion by 2033. So how does Europe's growth pattern compare? Is it different from Asia Pacific's, and what's driving it over there?
Yeah, it's a bit different. Well, like we said, Asia Pacific's growth often feels like it's about sheer scale and lots of new development.
Mm-hmm.
Europe's market, which is led by countries like Germany, the UK, and France, it shows more mature, consistent growth.
Okay, more steady.
Exactly. Germany, for instance, projected to grow from over 271 million to 482 million by 2033. And this isn't just expansion for expansion's sake. It's heavily influenced by a really strong emphasis on energy efficiency and Sustainable urban development. That's a big focus in Europe,
Right, the green transition playing a role.
definitely.
Yeah.
The UK and France are also major contributors, both moving towards nearly 400 million and 338 million respectively by 2033.
Still very significant numbers.
Oh, yeah. And what's particularly interesting, I think, is how the rest of Europe category that includes nations like Italy, Russia, Spain, Switzerland, and others is showing really significant widespread investment.
So it's not just the big three.
Not at all. It indicates this broad commitment to upgrading urban infrastructure right across the continent. Italy, for example, goes from 137 million to nearly 240 million. And that rest of Europe bucket jumps from about 135 million to over 370 million.
That widespread investment really does highlight how universal this trend is becoming, doesn't it?
It really does.
Okay, now let's cross the Atlantic. North America. This market earned over $1.2 billion in 2021, projected to hit over $2.3 billion by 2033.
Another major player.
Unsurprisingly, the United States takes the lead here, forecasted to rise from over $1 billion to nearly $2 billion.
The lion's share, as you'd expect.
Pretty much. Canada is also a significant contributor, growing to over $300 million. But here's a real standout I noticed: Mexico.
Ah, yes. Interesting case.
Yeah. While its numbers are smaller overall, it's posting an incredibly rapid CAGR, jumping from just over 10 million in 2021 to almost 44 million by 2033. What is driving that explosive growth down in Mexico?
Mexico's acceleration is fascinating, isn't it? It seems to indicate a uniquely aggressive investment in new urban developments.
Okay.
And it potentially reflects a real shift in governmental priorities towards, rapidly modernizing public spaces. Catching up? Maybe, but doing it fast.
So focused development.
Seems like it. And this kind of rapid urbanization and infrastructure investment, it's a theme we see echoing in other emerging markets too. Actually, that rapid growth in Mexico is a great segue to the Middle East.
Right.
Because there we also see really robust compound growth. This region is projected to increase from around 195 million in 2021 to over 411 million by 2033.
More than doubling.
Exactly. Saudi Arabia is leading the charge there, projected to more than double its market to over 73 million. And this substantial increase, along with growth from Turkey, the UAE, Egypt, and Qatar, well, it just underscores the massive investment in new and often very smart urban developments across that entire region. Lots of new city projects.
Huge projects, yeah. Okay, shifting south again.
Yeah.
South America. It also shows stable increases. Expected growth from nearly 200 million in 2021 to over 344 million by 2033.
Steady growth there.
Brazil accounts for a pretty significant share of that, moving from over 87 million to over 153 million. And we see consistent, stable increases from places like Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile. It seems to speak to a steady, ongoing commitment to urban development. Maybe not as explosive as some other regions, but consistent.
Consistent is the word, yeah. It reflects ongoing development rather than, say, massive new smart city rollouts everywhere just yet.
Right. And finally, let's touch on Africa.
Okay.
The market there is anticipated to grow from about 147 million in 2021 to over 250 million by 2033.
So still growing, definitely.
Yes, and this growth is directly attributable, the report says, to continued infrastructure development and those accelerating urbanization trends that are really sweeping across the continent.
Makes sense. As cities grow, the need for this infrastructure grows too.
Precisely. And Nigeria and South Africa are highlighted as the key contributors there, driving that regional expansion as more African cities start embarking on these larger scale modernization projects.
Got it. So development is happening across the board, really.
Wow. Okay. So we've really covered the globe here. We've seen the sheer scale of this urban light column market from Asia Pacific just dominating to Mexico's really rapid surge.
Mm-hmm.
And we've touched on the distinct drivers, propelling this growth in different regions. It's genuinely a multi-billion-dollar sector that's quietly, but quite dramatically, evolving our urban landscape.
It really is. So what does this all actually mean for you listening and for the cities we live in?
Well, this market's expansion, it's profoundly linked to those underlying drivers we mentioned.
Right.
We're talking about the proliferation of smart city initiatives everywhere, rising investments in urban infrastructure worldwide, and the relentless innovation in energy-efficient lighting. And beyond just lighting.
Yeah, the beyond seems key now.
Exactly. These trends aren't just about illuminating streets anymore. They are actively transforming urban light columns into these multifunctional hubs. They're shaping the very fabric of our urban environments, aiming to make them more connected, more efficient, and ultimately, more livable places. Exactly. These aren't just light poles anymore. They're becoming really integral components of our urban future, evolving into smart, connected systems.
That's the direction. Absolutely.
So, okay, wrapping this up. Considering this rapid growth, all these drivers we've talked about, what surprising new functions or forms do you imagine urban light columns might take on in our cities over, say, the next decade? Something beyond just illumination that maybe we haven't even thought of yet.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something maybe you don't think much about: streetlights.
Right.
But they're not just simple lights anymore. They're becoming these, powerful multifunctional hubs.
Exactly.
We're calling it the urban light column market. And it's really starting to change how cities work, how they look, how they evolve.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is to kind of unpack the drivers, the challenges, and the pretty exciting future for these things, these urban sentinels.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember these are way more than just lights now. They're becoming really critical pieces of smart city infrastructure.
A new way to see urban development.
Sort of, yeah.
Huh.
A unique lens on it, definitely.
Okay, so let's kick things off. What are the big forces really driving this shift? I mean, why are cities suddenly so interested in these smart light columns?
Well, a huge part is the global expansion of smart city projects. Governments everywhere are investing.
Right.
And what's fascinating is how much of this connects directly to stricter energy efficiency regulations.
Ah, okay. So saving power is a big motivator.
A massive one. Think about places like Europe with their environmental targets. They're pushing hard for LED, for solar-powered columns.
And it makes a difference.
Oh, yeah. We've seen data suggesting some city blocks cut their carbon footprint by 30% almost overnight just by switching.
Wow. Okay. That's significant. And it's not just the energy savings, right? What else is making these attractive?
Public safety is a big one, and urban aesthetics, too.
How so?
Well, imagine columns with integrated emergency call buttons, or CCTV, even things like air quality sensors built right in.
So they become multitaskers.
Exactly. A basic necessity becomes this smart asset. It helps with security, but also just making the city look and feel better.
And potentially faster emergency response.
There's potential there, yeah. Some pilot programs looked at integrating accident detection, showing it could potentially cut response times by, say, 10, maybe 15%.
That all sounds great, but transformations like this always hit roadblocks. What are the biggest hurdles for cities wanting to adopt this tech?
Yeah, that raises an important point. I mean, the number one issue is probably the high upfront cost, the capital investment.
It's expensive stuff.
It really is. And the installation itself can be incredibly complex. Think about digging up streets in a dense city center to run new cables.
Especially older cities with existing, crowded, underground infrastructure.
Exactly. Sometimes centuries old. It gets very complicated, very costly, very quickly.
And it's not just buying and installing them, right? What about keeping them running, the practical side?
That's another challenge. Maintenance and the lifespan of some of the smart bits.
Like the sensors.
Yeah, the sensors, maybe specialized solar panels. The LED light itself might last for ages, but these other components often don't.
And they're out in the elements.
Right. Harsh weather, even vandalism, that all adds to the long-term costs.
Yeah.
Significantly.
Okay, cost, maintenance. What about data side? You mentioned sensors.
Yeah. That brings us to probably the trickiest issue: data privacy and cybersecurity.
Because these columns are collecting information.
Constantly. Traffic patterns, environmental data, sometimes surveillance video. They're like urban data sponges.
Which creates risks.
Big risks. Hacking, misuse of data, it's a real concern. So you need robust and often expensive cybersecurity measures.
And that can slow things down.
Definitely. Especially in places with really strict privacy laws like, say, Germany, it adds another layer of complexity and potential delay.
Okay, so challenges is acknowledged. But let's shift gears. Here's where it gets really interesting. What about the future? What trends are shaping what these columns will become?
Well, what's really fascinating is the deeper integration of IoT, Internet of Things, and AI, artificial intelligence.
Making them truly smart.
Exactly. Think beyond just on-off. Imagine a column that learns, it optimizes light based on real-time pedestrian traffic.
So it dims down when a street's empty.
Right, maybe late at night. But brightens instantly if someone walks or cycles by.
And the data from that.
Is incredibly valuable. Super granular data that city planners can use for everything from optimizing bus routes to deciding where new shops might thrive.
That's pretty amazing. Almost like future-proofing the infrastructure itself.
Sort of, yeah. And speaking of future-proofing, another big trend is modularity. Customizable designs.
Yeah.
Manufacturers are offering options, different heights, colors, materials, but also, crucially, swappable digital features.
Like Lego bricks for lampposts.
Kind of. You could upgrade a sensor from, say, 4G to 5G, or add an EV charging point later without ripping out the whole column.
Makes upgrades much easier, less disruptive.
And much more cost-effective in the long run. It allows cities to adapt as technology evolves.
And what about power? You mentioned solar earlier.
Yes, the shift towards renewable energy and even off-grid capability is huge. More columns are getting built-in solar panels and battery storage.
So they can operate independently.
Correct. Which is obviously great for remote spots like parks or maybe coastal roads. But think about resilience, too.
Disaster preparedness.
Exactly. If the main power grid goes down in a storm or some other emergency, these lights and maybe communication functions they support can stay active.
Okay, so if we just pull back for a second, what's the big picture here? It seems clear these aren't just streetlights anymore.
Not at all.
They've evolved into these intelligent, interconnected hubs. And they're kind of quietly but really profoundly reshaping our cities.
Absolutely. And that leads to a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener, to consider.
Go on.
As these smart sentinels become more common, think about how they're doing more than just lighting the street. They're becoming active participants in the city's life.
Exchanging data, responding dynamically.
Right. So how might that constant, quiet interaction change your experience of the city? Will cities start to feel more alive, more responsive in ways we're only just starting to imagine? What comes next?